So before we get started, I want to say something about home practice. So home practice essentially is, the kind of, I don't know how to say it, daily practice in general. Anything you practice daily is a huge indicator of how your life is. Meaning, when you do the same thing every day, you can measure what's happening in your life relative to your practice. And so that's really, really valuable. So even if you just do one song a day, it can be a 3-minute song, 5-minute song, and from that, from that song, you can get onto the mat and feel what's happening. And then eventually you can figure out why are some days more open than others, why are some days more emotional than others, why are some days very heady while others are not. And it's a really good way to engage with your body as a daily process. If you want to do this as a home practice, how you would do that is by going and finding a spot that's always the same spot, and finding one piece of music. If you have time constrictions, just one piece of music that, and it's often useful in the beginning to use the same piece of music as an entry. It's kind of a portal, like a pathway into the practice. Your body gets really used to that. And within that, you can just, do one song, you can do more than one song. And it doesn't matter if you know what you're moving. It really doesn't make any difference. You don't need to label what is happening or make sense of it. You're just allowing the body. And as you do that, things wash out and things show up. And of course, it's not as clear as I have a sensation and then I have an emotion, then I have a thought, because of course, all of these patterns are conglomerates. So you might have part sensation that's also an emotion, and then something pops up. Doesn't matter, you just keep on moving. So that's what I want to say about at home practice. In the Embody Toolkit, which is on the website, there is a guided, where I'm guiding a piece of nonlinear. If you like guidance, of course, we'll also do more classes. He was saying I have a knee injury. I totally ruined my knee about 10 years ago. So you can, of course, do it on your back or seated. But what I do, I just recently tweaked my knee. I was saying this yesterday. I have knee pads that I wear, but not like the sexy, like twerk knee pads that people wear, those nice little things, but like industrial grade Tyler's knee pads with gel inside. It's a very odd look, but so I have knee pads, and I also I have a sheepskin, usually a very thick sheepskin, on my mat, because I actually like that exploration. But if you have a knee injury, by all means, do it seated, do it laying down. Any which way you can practice. It's not about, the form is secondary. It's good to have form, but movement is in exploration is really what it's about. People say yawning and dizzy and nauseous, that's completely normal. One aspect of the body releasing is often that the energy moves up and out, which makes you feel like you're going to throw up, which is this motion. So then it's really nice if you just go really deep and really slow, and it will pass. It's actually usually a sign that something's popping out or releasing. Of course, if you have a tendency to get, positional vertigo or so, then I wouldn't do it too far down on hands and knees, but I might do it laying down or sitting, if that's an issue. Yawning, super good. It means your nervous system starting to really regulate. There's lots of other things that can happen. Getting distracted between because of pain and releasing the pain. I would say for this practice, there's a specific release practice, which we'll do 2 weeks from now. But for this practice, and also if you have chronic pain, it's best to move as the pain and not avoid it or go towards it. Because one of the issues with particularly chronic pain is that turning away from it causes more contraction. There is actually a really, really good little talk and lecture that Steve did on chronic pain, because he had very severe chronic pain, that I will send out in the follow-up, so you can get that little. And somebody's saying, struggle moving in non-habitual ways, very frustrating. Yes, that's a good one. Non-habitual ways are by definition frustrating because it's not your usual way. And so what's good about moving in non-habitual ways, this is also true in life, not only in nonlinear, is that when you do things outside of your usual habit pattern, other things stir up. Some of those things feel super irritating, like you want to crawl out of your skin. Some of them are just different. You know, there's these practices that when you go into learning in a different way, you do things like you turn your toilet paper roll around, or you brush your teeth with your left hand instead of your right. And in that non-habitual way, the entire system gets a bit jangled, and that is very frustrating. So do it for a second. If it's too much, just move in your habitual way again, and then try again, and so on. Is it important that the music you choose for nonlinear has no emotional connection? Yes. Oh, the flying song with a near and dear friend who died recently. Well, actually, that song has a very emotional connection to me as well, also through a friend who died not that recently. And it's the song that I use personally for my heart practice, for the part of the heart. It's perfectly fine to have a strong emotional connection to a song, particularly when it's a deeply heartfelt connection. When you choose music, you can have music you have strong connections to, that's fine. Just don't use music that has lyrics, because lyrics will make you go into your head. Or at least not lyrics you can understand, let's put it this way. Okay, let's see. Crying, very good. Crying, very, very good. Not all tears, of course, are grief or pain, right? You can also cry because your heart opens. So there's many ways to cry, and all of them are very, very good. Gas and belching, also good. Any kind of release is good. And because you're in the privacy of your own home, you are absolutely free to do whatever you want. When we're in large rooms with people, that can sometimes be a bit of a scene. We have been seen to scoot through the aisles with some Palo Santo sticks to exercise demons and gassy explosion. So, but in your own home, you can absolutely do that. However you want to. And there's some fun practices. We're actually going to offer this at some point in the summer. We do this thing called Lineage and Liberation, where we work on mother and father lineage and how that affects our relationship. And there's a piece in that particular practice that is nonlinear based, a release practice. And we once did this in Melbourne in a very, very large room with a lot of people. And at some point, the entire room smelled that you cannot even imagine, because of course, you know, parental and lineage stuff brings out a lot, and people weren't really wearing deodorant, I think. And it was so bad that at some point when I stood up, I almost fainted. And I would say that would, you know, denote a very good nonlinear release. So do what you want to do in the belching, farting, moaning, groaning, and crying department. Erin.
Hey, Michaela.
Woo!
Hi. I just have a question about when you said connecting with our heart, and I think you said something like moving is love. And I just want to get your opinion or your take on what that really means. As like, what is love when when you say it like that in that context?
Yes, good question. Um, what I'm talking about is the somatic experience of love in your body. So, if I can ask you to do this right now. So, if you imagine for a moment, or visualize, or even feel right in your body someone you really love,
Hmm.
right? Could be a partner, an animal, a parent, a friend, and you close your eyes and you really, really feel it. And you maybe even feel like you're seeing them after a long time, or you're touching them. There is a sensation in the body. It's what we would call a somatic reference point. So somewhere in your body, things light up. So I'm thinking of it right now, and it's like over here, and it goes down my arm. So that's kind of how love lights up my body. And then I can orient towards that, because that's something very tangible. I love someone. When I love someone, and we all know this when we're freshly in love, right? Everything becomes just alive and bright and sparkly and informed. And that's love moving you, or you moving love through your body. And that's always available. It comes in the form of compassion. It comes in the form of passion. It comes in the form of, having compassion for people who are in horrible circumstances. Comes in the form of wanting to help an injured animal. It comes in the form of gratefulness, romantic love, all kinds of ways, and they all inform the body and they light the body up. And in nonlinear, we feel the lighting up of the body, and we kind of spread that feeling through the body. And there's in the tradition that I teach and was trained in, there's a specific practices where you use the palms of your hands and your fingers to kind of extend the heart, right? Where I'm kind of creating somewhat of a horizontal plane where my heart gets moved through my body, so to speak. And then I can move the heart through the room and towards you. And it's a somatic exploration. So it's not very heady, but we often use loving someone as the entry point, the portal, because that's something you can easily feel. And often, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but often we're in nature, like an amazing sunset, or the beach you love the most. As the sun goes down, the water gets like blue and pink and whatever. It's so love filled, right? Light filled, that you almost pop out of your body, and then you can start crying. And so that, to me, is how love moves the body. And when we allow love to move the body becomes incredibly alive and radiant, regardless of age or looks or health or anything. And that radiance you often see in people who are accomplished in their fields of whatever, meditation, spiritual practice, body practice. There's a brightness that has nothing to do with makeup or age or whatever. And when you can feel that, then you can let that voluntarily infuse your body, because you know how to access it through the body. And then you can be out there in the world as love, moving as love, giving as love, driving as love, So that's how I look at it. Because ultimately that is what we are, right? We're radiant beings of compassion and love. And the times when we're not is simply because we don't have enough stamina in moving love through our body. And by the way, the same is true for pleasure. That's the exact same set of circumstances and many other emotions. But when we can infuse our entire body somatically with that, then more of us gets to play as love in the world.
I think you answered a bit of this already, but I definitely found I was very distracted and with a lot of thoughts. And I'm just wondering whether that, as well as I felt a lot of pain in my knees because I've got a lot of old bruising and things from a lot of sports during my life. I'm just wondering whether those two things with practice, do they just, ease or I'm able to manage it better? Is it just a case of this is really the first time I'm dedicating myself to this, so don't expect too much? Or
all of the above. Okay. So one of the interesting things about a practice like this, which looks deceivingly simple, right? Which makes it so accessible. There's a lot to it, but you don't need to know that necessarily, right? Because it's facilitated. But what happens is every day is different. And every moment within the practice, of course, is different, but particularly every day is different. And so you will have days, I have days, right? I've been doing this for close to 30 years, pretty much daily. It's barely ever a day where I'm not at least doing the shower or something like that. By the way, people, when you have to leave, you can leave. New dates are on the website, and I'm just gonna keep going for a little while longer because why not? If you have the time, I have the time. So, but people say bye. So some days you'll feel really achy and off and super heady. And then other days you're like right in the zone and it's amazing and you have all this pleasure in the body and it's really good. And then the next day you're totally distracted. And that is the virtue of ongoing practice. Not everybody practices every day, but if you have ongoing practice, you learn about how your body reacts to life vis-a-vis of the practice, right? So you can tell, like for instance, I know that if I move after I've done emails, my body is way, way, way more tense than when I move right out of bed, right? That's good information, for instance, right?
Is there a better time to do it then?
No, I think that the way to do it is to really condition your body to pop in really quickly, right? So you do that by using the same song in the same place, and then you just let whatever happens happen. Now, like I said, there's other modalities where you work specifically with, let's say, release or pleasure or creativity. But for right now, all you're going to do is let whatever happens happen without judgment. Make adjustments, right? If your knees hurt, lay on your back. Yeah. I recently injured my knee gardening. I now wear knee pads, but not like the sexy stripper knee pads, the twerking knee pads, but like Tyler's knee pads, because I like being on my knees, right? So you just adjust as you need to, but you understand that your body is giving different messages. And often when we start sensitizing, and this is one of the prime sensitizing practices, we actually feel things more because there's less noise. So things are a little bit elevated, right? You feel more and you're like, what? And it's essentially just because the noise level around is lower in, your mental noise level. And so suddenly it's like really big. So practice will smooth things out, absolutely. One of the nice things is your body will start going, oh, here we are, this is the place. Right? And then things just get smoother and easier. But one thing that I want to say, and this is something that I usually only tell our teacher trainers, because that's usually when I do formal teaching on the process, is that if you have a lot of thoughts that are specific to, let's say, a project or your day or something that's unfinished, we're not talking about old emotions or things, but like, like for instance, when I wrote the book, I had crazy creative thoughts when I would do nonlinear. And so they wouldn't go away because my brain was really trying to not lose the thread. So what I would do is I'd have a notepad. I'm the queen of the notepads. Everything I have like 8 of them with different topics, right? I'd have a notepad and a pen, and I just, you know, like scribble the things that I needed to get out of my head into onto a piece of paper, so it would download and then it wouldn't constantly pop back up. Right? And so I would do that for the first 10, 15 minutes to kind of free my, you know, my mind, so to speak. And then for the rest of the hour or two, I sometimes do longer practices, it'd be totally clear. You know? So, but you can also just deal with a thought loop by continuously moving. And with thought loops, non-habitual movement is usually really interesting. You can really mess with your thought loops when you start, you know, doing weird things that are totally not rhythmic, and you're flailing and you're doing all this stuff, and suddenly it's gone, right? So it's definitely an invitation to be not pretty and totally non-habitual. How long do you recommend a practice? I would say 5 minutes, a song, and that's, you know, super easy. Also, I do it in the shower a lot and on planes and places like that. You know, in the sense that it doesn't have to be formal, but it's good to have a formal practice under your belt before you just go whenever. So moving as pain. So right now I have, I did something here to my neck, went to the chiropractor, it got worse. so I'm actually in pain up here. So moving as the pain is just, I'm moving with it. I'm not releasing it necessarily. I'm just kind of moving with it. And as I do, there's actually a really strong emotion here in my solar plexus. And so now I'm kind of, I'm taking my attention away, so to speak. It happened automatically to the solar plexus, and now I'm moving with the solar plexus. And when I do that, then the emotion comes up, and then actually my breath gets bigger, and then, you know, other things happen. So moving as the pain is simply that you are with the pain. You don't deny it, and you don't pick the scab, so to speak. You don't go further into it. You're just bringing, you know, up what needs to be brought up.
Hey, Michaela, first of all, I want to say I love hearing the farm noises. It makes me feel like I'm in the shed with everyone. It makes me happy. I just had a question, especially in the last week or so when I've been doing these practices. I've been feeling a lot of tendency to do sort of like self-soothing movements, either just like, you know, running my fingers through my scalp, or even just sort of curling up and just touching my body in a sort of comforting way. And I'm trying to sort of square, you know, not getting stuck in a rut with also honoring my body's need to sort of soothe itself. And so I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit, and if that's like sort of hindering the release, or if that's a necessary part of the practice.
I think it's both, right? So some of the things that happen in nonlinear, of course, is that there's a battle of the mind, the rational mind with the body, right? And then there is needs of the body that are often not easily recognized. So, you know, a lot of people in the beginning when they do nonlinear, I'm saying this for those of you who have maybe never done it before, it's like, am I doing this right? How am I moving? Do my movements look okay? Do I feel okay, right? So that will go away over time, and you can also wear that down through duration. That's a perfectly normal thing, right? But then the other thing is that you'll do some movements and you feel the soothing of it, and you go, oh my God, am I just self-soothing? Is this the right thing to do? And should I move it up, you know, like mix it up? And the answer to that is there has to be a basic trust established between our, you know, rational cognitive mind and the wisdom of our body. So in the beginning, I would say you just have to trust that whatever comes up is the thing that needs to come up, right? once we have a basic trust established in our body's wisdom, which only happens through seeing the after effects of practice, where you can go, oh, whew, I had a bit more space in my awareness today, or I wasn't as reactive, or I actually had a bit more openness in the body, or something like that. Then you can go, oh, maybe I'm sticking in this rut too long and I don't want to leave my safe cocoon, right? And then you can do a little bit of non-habitual movement to see what happens. But to begin with, I would say, go with what happens.
I have a question. This was my first non-linear movement today, but I've done like bioenergetic work, and it reminded me a lot of, you know, just really moving with your body and going to the experience. I had a really high level of intensity from the very first second I started. And I got to this point where I got so utterly nauseous that it felt like, okay, I move one more inch and I'm just gonna throw up. And it felt like I don't want to go there right now. So, you know, and I sort of toned down the movement and tried to find a movement that made it possible to be with the nausea. But yeah. I'm curious, you know, I mean, obviously that's trauma that's in the body. So, you know, I'm not worried about it. I'm just wondering what could be helpful.
Well, again, right, there's some stylistic and personal decisions we have to make around our practice. This particular room, which is also the room that for many years I practiced in personally, has seen a great many puke buckets. I have what I call a puke bucket. It's a very special bucket. It's this beautiful white enameled farm bucket with a wood handle that is designated just for practice. And the reason for that is that, of course, when you practice by yourself versus in a group where sometimes if you throw up, everybody else gets nauseous, of course, because particularly throwing up creates massive mirror neurons in other people. And it's not just the smell, it's just the sound makes other people go there, right? And what it is, like you said, a lot of it has to do with trauma in the body, but there's also, independent of the trauma, what can happen when you do these movements is you kind of reverse the energetic flow in your body.
Yeah.
And the energy comes up the front and kind of out. And that is the puking energy, right? So you can go at it two ways. You can go, well, it's not, I don't want to just throw it off. In that case, that would be one of the few instances where you would regulate your movements down, like you said, where you might also kind of really breathe down. Usually I don't advocate at all that you mess with the breath. If it gets really, really heavy with the nausea and you don't want to throw up, just breathe down and feel like you're breathing down into the belly, the front of your body and stuff like that. Then that helps some. But you could also try, and this is something that I had to experiment with, is I would experiment with sound, because a lot of that also has to do with things that are not being expressed, with having habitually capped expression. Yeah. Rightly and wrongly so, right? Because we can't always express exactly how we want to. I mean, we are, you know, social creatures in a society, so can't always go when somebody disgusts you, right? So, but in your nonlinear practice, you can do that, for instance, right? So there's ways to experiment. And as I was saying earlier to Molly, it's all an experimentation. Yeah. Right? You become kind of the explorers of your somatic body. And as an explorer of your somatic system and of your internal landscape, you know, sometimes you have to kind of put the rubber boots on and the rubber gloves and the headlamp and go in, right? And other times you just want a leisurely stroll in the meadows and you don't want to deal. And either of those are fine, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've read your book, The Wild Woman's Way, and today it was my first experience live of a nonlinear movement session. And it really surprised me how hard it was for me to keep my head down. At the same time, I could feel it allowing me to move in non-habitual ways, but it was really hard. Several times during the session, I really wanted to stretch my head and have it up. And
you might not be able to hear that because I was back there and the microphone doesn't last that long. It's only in the beginning that you do it. Then you can move your head however you want.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because then I was wondering why we needed to keep the head down.
Yes.
But why do we have to do it at the beginning then?
Well, the reason why we do it in the beginning is that we carry a lot of tension in our neck and shoulders. And when we go on hands and knees and we drop the head, then that extension of the head, you can kind of feel your head is almost like a bowling ball on the end of a stick, you know, and that gives the nervous system a certain kind of a signal, you know, relax. Then you can move and explore with your neck, however. I'm going to have to find a way to be heard better from back there, but it's not that easy because I can't drag a microphone back there. But yes, you can do that. However, what you were saying is also really important, which is sometimes when we impose a certain kind of constriction on our expression, we find a richness that we otherwise would not have had, you know, quite the same way, because we all have these habitual ways of moving, right? And that's very important, that we break out of the habits and patterns we have.
Yeah, it really allowed me to feel all the stress in my shoulders and neck, and
that's right.
It was much more tight than I thought it was actually.
And that's why it's so important that we become explorers of our bodies and our, you know, our system, so we can make better decisions in our lives. Practice shouldn't be separate from life, right? It should be part of life. So
good, thank you.
As we got into the heart, I had already been kind of rolling onto my side and rolling around and getting on my back, and I'd kind of been all over the place. But I really felt like it was hard to totally like I felt like my heart was really blocked from the back. And so I just felt really called to like want my heart to feel open. And so I just kind of rolled like onto my side and was like, you know, kind of feeling that. And then that's when I had like a huge release. Like that's when I really felt like stuff come through, and I started crying and all of that. So that was really good. And then kind of along the same lines, because I wasn't always on my hands and knees, I did at some point want to feel more grounded. So I pushed my feet into the wall. And even like at some point I backed myself into the corner because it just felt like I needed that grounding, but didn't feel good to be on my hands and knees the whole time. So
yeah. You know, what you're describing is actually the report of having been sensitized to the needs of your body, right? So all of that's fine. You don't necessarily need to stay on your hands and knees. That's why I'm saying you can do it on your back. You can do it like kneeling. I just don't like people to stand up because they lose ground, like you said. The more you move, the more you lose ground. So then you have to find ground again. How you find ground is your personal exploration, of course. And like I said, there's no right or wrong way. And there's no nonlinear police who comes and gets you if you're, you know, not doing it. These are kind of best practice suggestions, really. You know, of things that I found useful. And, you know, one of the interesting things, I want to say that because, you know, nonlinear looks deceptively easy. And, you know, a lot of people do a class and then go and want to teach it in their yoga class or something. But nonlinear movement teaching only works if you've had substantial practice. So for instance, our teacher trainings have to do months and months and months of them, where we have them do all the modalities. They have to do several hours of continuous movement so that they can teach a class of several hours. So one of the important things to know for yourself in this practice is the practice in itself informs you, right? You have to trust that, because it's your personal bodily practice that makes nonlinear powerful.
This is my first time doing the non-linear, but I have done trauma release exercises for many years. First, like doing all the parts of the system, but now it's more of a, like the shaking comes automatically when I do yoga, and I was noticing that the same thing happened here. And I was kind of curious sometimes, because it was like, move as you're feeling, and then the shaking just comes, and I'm not sure if that is what I'm feeling or is it the release. And I also been very curious lately about maybe the shaking is just a habit. and so I was just wondering if you have any experience with this combo, or so.
Yes, that is a great question. Yes, so nonlinear is specifically geared, this particular moving what you're feeling isn't, but there's a one aspect of nonlinear, which is release, which we'll do in the next set of sessions, is specifically geared towards bringing the shaking and allowing the body to, the nervous system to do the thing it does to release. It's not the only way you can release. You can just release through contracting and releasing, or dissolving, but all of those ask the nervous system to let go the way a human can, or a mammal can, actually, because all animals do it. So when you do moving what you're feeling and you have the shaking, then you just shake, but you still keep one part of your body consciously moving, so you don't get stuck in that, right? And often what I find when I have a moment of shaking, if I keep on moving, even though I'm shaking, right? So I might be, then a deeper layer can unfold. Because you're absolutely right. And this is always a bit the danger when we do things and have go-to patterns, the shaking can become a habit, right? Where even the slightest bit makes you shake. And while shaking is never a bad idea, right, in general, sometimes that can become almost like a way out of feeling what's happening. Not always, but sometimes, right? Where we just have these mechanisms that bypass the full, whoa, why, what, right? So it's good to kind of, in the middle of the shaking, the best way I can describe it, because it's a feeling, not a mental thing, is that you turn towards the thing that causes the shaking, right? You turn towards the shaking. You don't let the shaking take you out. You go in, right? And you're like, oh yeah, what is this? So that's the feeling in the body. And then a deeper unfolding can happen. Oh.
Yeah.
So it's good to observe that, it's really, really good to observe what's habit, what's a bypass, what's useful. And the only way you can do that, once again, is by doing it, right? The body doesn't respond well to what I call armchair practice, right? Meaning you can't just sit and read about something or talk about it. You have to actually do it. And when you do, then you have experiences like you had, where you can go, is this release, or am I habitually going to this place because I know it, right? And then you can once again explore.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. So good to be with you. And yesterday was my birthday, and I ate some things that I don't normally eat. So today I'm having a lot of nausea. So the woman who was talking about the nausea was really feeling that. So normally I wouldn't even probably move feeling this way, but I did it, and it was really nice to move just like, and then you said the thing about move differently than you do habitually.
Yeah.
And I realized that my movements are pretty smooth and undulating. And so I started to kind of jerk my body a little bit. And it was such an unfamiliar sensation to jerk my body. And what it felt connected to was my conditioning to not show my displeasure, my revulsion, and it was like, I could feel in there my inability to set a boundary because I don't have that range in my body of like, And so I just wanted to thank you, because I feel like that was a really big breakthrough from like feeling nauseous to really claiming this capacity of my body to move away from what doesn't feel good and to show that. So thank you. And anything you want to say about that, I would be, delighted. But
I think that's really, really important, right? We have all these things that are not allowed.
Yeah.
In ourselves, right? Other people might have done it to us to begin with, but now it's us, right? We can't look angry, we can't look ugly, we can't move in an unrhythmic way, we can't, be disagreeable or whatever, right? We can't be bored. Somebody's asking, what about boredom? Boredom is great, right? Boredom is the threshold to an exploration you don't want to do, by the way, right? If you get bored in a practice, it's usually because you're about to hit the mother lode of some stuff that you have suppressed. And your psyche goes, no, there's nothing happening. Oh, no, don't look here. There's nothing here. It's like, what is that thing in Star Wars? These are not the droids you're looking for. And that's boredom, for instance, or nausea, or so there's these caps we have on our energy. Mm-hmm. One cap is boredom, one cap is appropriateness or disgust, right? Where we go, oh no, those are caps, and they cap, the volcano of free expression and the volcano of old stuff coming out. And so ever so often you have to kind of, this is a very gross way of saying it, scratch the pimple. You have to just go, and then then freedom happens. And by the way, how our vitality gets blocked is by those caps, right? That's what makes us tired. That's what makes us less pleasurable. That's what gives us dis-ease in our emotions, in our body, in our mind. So that's really something to do, particularly when you're alone at home. Mm-hmm. And often when a practice is led the way we are now doing that, you don't have to guide yourself. That's the nice thing about guided practice versus self-guided practice, is that when somebody holds your practice and knows what they're doing, you don't have to have that faculty going, and you can just go, right? And so, yes, somebody's saying, what about burping and yawning? All of those things happen. I was saying yesterday, I've taught classes, there's a set of, a class that's called Lineage and Liberation, which is about freeing the mother and father lineage. I'm actually going to make it an online thing for the summer because we're all stuck still. But in that, there's a release piece where you free your ancestry, where sometimes it gets so smelly in the room because everybody starts sweating and farting and belching, and and it's like, whoa, I once almost passed out standing up in a room full of people releasing the epigenetics of their ancestry. And that can happen, right? And of course, in the comfort of your own home, you can burp and belch and fart and puke and whatever you want freely. In a big group of people, that can be a bit intense, but by all means, do the thing.